Excellent. Well, welcome to the TADSummit podcast number 2. So we're kicking off with the TADSummit Innovators section, and a long friend of TADHack and TADSummit. I think you were presenting at the second TADSummit in Istanbul. Was the first time you were with us, and have been with us since. So Karel, please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Alan, to have me on this show, and great meeting you, Johnny. Actually, I've been working on voice for more than 25 years now, but mostly in the telecom, which means transporting voice. And over the last 10 years, I've been working on doing more than just transporting voice. And in fact, it's all started when I met you before TADSummit. It was in the US. I was living in the US at that time. And we met, at that time, Twilio wasn't yet Twilio, but there was all those startups going, doing what we now call programmable voice. And I got fascinated by the subject because I thought, it's like, you are Google, you have all those search, and instead of learning from the search, you just, are a pure database. And telco is kind of the way it worked. We are transporting those millions of hours of voice, but doing nothing out of all the information contained in that. And so I started working on that subject at Orange when I came back to France, and working on things like going from speech to text, from text to speech, doing synchronous, asynchronous, and we built a VoIP app that was kind of our WhatsApp homemade in France. We had a few million users, but it never get anywhere because we didn't get the support of the operators. And so I left, and in 2016, I built my company, which is called Voxist. And Voxist comes from voice assistant. So that will talk to Johnny, I think. And the idea was that, if you take this simple use case, which is the voicemail, and you from the telco point of view, it's a cost center. It's something you're losing money on, and if you could not have it, it'd be better off. And from my point of view, it's a full of potential feature, because if you think about the voicemail becoming an assistant, which I think it will, then suddenly there is so much value you can create for your subscribers. And so I started with Voxist as building just a simple voicemail system where you had two key features. One, which is we transcribe the message that people leave into text. So you can read it and blink of an eye, you know why people are calling you. You don't need to listen to it, because usually if you don't answer and people go to voicemail, it's because you can't actually listen to the message. And the second thing we do is we do a personalized greeting. So here we use text to speech. And the idea is that if you call me, why should you have the same boring message than everybody else? So when you call me, you have something to say, hi, Alan, how are you? Karel is not above. It's so something we can personalize to you. So we started with that in 2018, something like that. And I started with off-the-shelf solution because I was a small startup with no funding. So we are self-funded almost. With a couple of business angels that help us, but still no VC funding, let's say. Out of that, we started building the knowledge and the information, the data, to create our own speech to text. And so last year we started, releasing our first speech to text, doing French and English. And so now we are going after other use cases that are not just voicemail. So we work with a Fortune 100 company doing knowledge management, because the idea is that all the information in the calls that until now, if you take a big Fortune 100 company, you can roughly say they have 1 million of hours of meetings per year. And all the information that is exchanged during those meetings is lost after the meeting is closed. You might have the digital recording, but you don't really have the information recording. And so we built something where you can do natural language search, and you ask a question and you will find all the meetings where people discuss that. So you can identify also the people who talked about that. So, you are in Singapore in the same company where Alan is working, and suddenly, this guy in the US, he knows a lot about that subject. So let's, give him a ring. So if you're a new employee in one of those very large company where it's super hard to know who knows what, it can be very useful. So that's one use case. Another use case we are working on, which is actually a use case which already is being taken care of by a big guy, is in the healthcare model, in the healthcare domain. So all the doctors, they do their notes, and they have a verbal recording, and then you have a secretary most of the time. Still, in most countries, there's still a secretary that listens to that and type it, or you have an AI who does that. And there is a big guy who got bought by Microsoft, who probably has the most of the market, but they are being complacent because as they own the market, they have a monopoly. They are expensive. They are not the best. They are not innovating, and so we think there is a big opportunity for a smaller guy to disrupt that market too. So that's kind of what we are doing now. But the vision, so I'm working with Working Group 2 now. They got acquired by Cisco very recently, and my vision is really to put speech to text and text to speech and NLP in the core of the telecom network. And so that's something we are starting now to build with Working Group 2 for a carrier in the US, a smaller carrier, starting with the voicemail, because that's where we come from. But my idea is that one day, you should have any call that you're doing. Why do you need a third-party provider? The operator has access to all this information. It should be real time. And at the end of any call, you should be able to have a recording of all the information that was exchanged that's important, all the key points that were treated, meetings that have been set up, etc. So that's what we're building at Voxist.
Absolutely amazing. I can think of two verticals that off the top of my head. So in the United States, we have something called litigation finance, which is basically these groups that finance large litigations, plaintiff law firms, poisoning people on their food or talcum powder, or, not protecting people's phones from spam and robocalling or whatever litigation there is. And I think companies are opening up a Pandora box, because if they can actually search through all meetings of the company in discovery and actually point out certain items and conversations, I think, if the litigation world gets a hold of you, I think they'll be your first, I wouldn't call it VC, probably be worse than VC because they're lawyers. Which if there's can possibly be something worse than VCs, thankfully you're not dealing with VCs. That's an amazing product. And
that is very interesting. I
yeah.
have to say, because litigation, I know what they do because I lived in the US, but as a European, it's still not on top of my mind because we don't really do that. But
well, that's what we do here. America is built by lawyers. I mean, you have two lawyers, and then they go to court, and then they sit in front of another lawyer who puts a robe on, and they call him the judge, right? So you have two lawyers, one representing either side, whether it be a company and the plaintiffs or what have you, or a civil matter or whatever it may be. And then you have a judge who is also a lawyer. And then you have politicians who are 90% of the time lawyers. So we're a country of lawyers. That's what really the way I look at the U.S. Differently than the rest of the world. I would think Europe is basically a country of regulators that are lawyers, and it's a little bit of a different thing. But with our Constitution and our freedoms, the lawyers are there, and for you have an open society and an open market, and you've got a lot of companies that come into this country and just do whatever they want and harm people. And then, look at the Slacker family. I mean, they actually, pushed opioids on America and settled for billions and billions of dollars. These people killed hundreds of thousands of people, destroyed millions of lives by, funneling, OxyContin and making OxyContin the cool thing, but didn't tell anybody how addictive it was.
Yep.
But that's a whole nother conversation. But, they didn't go to jail. They just paid like a bazillion dollars, and they're still billionaires, but they paid everybody, because in this country, it all just comes down to, well, how much money are you going to pay? What did you do? How did you do that? Okay, let's settle. So I think that's fascinating, Alan, if you think about that. If you could go into company meetings in discovery and actually search conversations on who said what to who and who was pushing what. I mean, that's groundbreaking. I mean, for my own personal, I have a hard time writing emails because I talk so fast and think so fast that I end up starting to write an email and I end up talking about something that I'm thinking about, 2 minutes later, because you're always telling me to slow down. And plus, New York Italians from
and it's amazing that
fast.
the technology now is really. I mean, honestly, I was even surprised. So, it was one of the Fortune 100 company I work with. So it was, mostly English, but as most big American group, they have people coming from all over the place, and there was people I could not understand. I mean, honestly, I've lived in the US. My English is still, with a big French accent, but it's quite good.
Mm-hmm.
And there was people I could not understand, and the algorithm will. Yeah. I could read the transcript, and suddenly I'm like, oh yeah, that's what he's saying. And so that's really amazing in terms of the accent, and then the speed. You're talking about the speed. So for the doctors, same thing. It's like in French in this case. I hear the doctor speaking. I'm like, what? He speaks like super fast. On top of that, it's very tricky vocabulary. And again, well, it's still a little harder. So we're still working on that one.
You guys, yeah. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, continue.
No, I was just going to say so.
You guys need to. You need to come to. You need to come to Queens, New York, where you have 100. It's the highest diversity county in the country, and basically there's over 140 countries represented there, with all of them speaking different dialects and different versions of English. And boy, if you can crack the code in Queens, you could take over the world. And then in the U.S., people talk differently from Long Island to even Connecticut, or even Boston, or forget Boston, and we don't even understand them. They don't even understand themselves half the time. We have a thing in New York with Boston and New York, so that's a dig to my Boston friends. But
so the technology has made extraordinary progress over the last 10 years, and we went from something where you really had to be careful the way you speak, and you knew you were speaking to a computer and that would work, but if it was not. If you didn't know and you were just speaking normally, then it wouldn't work. And now we are getting to the point where you can just take almost anyone and it will work. And I say almost because it's not there yet. I mean, you hear it's kind of like in the telco industry, you hear things like, hey, now the algorithms are better than human with only 2% of error rates when human is at 5%. And you're like, well, where did you test that? And you better be in a very calm room with somebody speaking like normally almost. So it's not totally fair marketing, but
But
nothing works for me.
Because I just want to relate this to TADSummit because yes, last week we had Thomas on talking about VCons. That container is critical for all the work that Karel's doing. It enables the data that he's gathering to be compliant with all the personal information regulations as well.
So indeed, I was listening actually to Thomas last week, and I was like, I could say exactly what he was saying. I could have said the same thing. I totally share his vision, and we are kind of really at the frontier of each other. Yes. So indeed, we do a lot of work on conversational, and I'm very interested by the VCon. At that point, we are more on the AI side of things.
Yes.
But we worked a lot with Jambons and other providers like that, CPaaS providers, and how we can integrate the closest we can integrate. And if you look at real telecom use case, what you realize is, and I talk with some people that are connected to dozens of speech to text system, and none of them works always.
Yes,
they all work in certain scenario, but at the end, the best people that do those conversational AI, they are connected to many different providers.
Yes,
and they will
expensive.
Use the one that's the best depending on the use case, or even during the same conversation, they might change because they know like this one is very good when it's something like I need to detect a yes or no. It's very short. And I have one scenario where it works very well. But now if I need to have a very long sentence and I need to be exact, then maybe it's not the same algorithm that works. And right now, most provider, we have only one algorithm that we provide to our customer. In my case, I have actually 2 or 3, but it's not very often the case. Mm-hmm. And so from the CPaaS or the conversational AI point of view, that means it's best being connected to more than one. And on top of that, you have the issue of languages for sure. So if you are in Europe, you do have English, but English is never enough. And so depending also on the language, you might see that X and YZ is very good with French, but is crap at German, and ABC is much better at German. So that's why for now, at least a lot of the conversational AI provider, they need to be connected to more than one.
Exactly. In fact, what we'll see again at TADSummit coming up in October, Rob Pickering has a great demo where it's two ChatGPT bots chatting to each other about placing an order. And in it, you can see all the errors in the speech to text, yet the other bot is able to see through that to the intent, and it gets over that. So I think this, I mean,
I was working with a cloud provider where we are doing a partnership, so they will provide our speech to text to their customer. And one of the issue was that we gave them two algorithms, one we call fast and one we call slow. And we tell them the fast one is not as good in terms of the error rates, but for conversational AI is great because you don't care about the spellings. You know, there is no human that's going to say, "Oh, it's badly spelled." What you care is that the intent is get there, and so we fine-tune that in terms of speed versus error rate. And at the end, we are launching without that one because they could not get it. They were like, "Oh, but we can't give that to our customer. It's making more error than the other one. So we will just give the other one." So I say, "Okay, let's start with the good one, and then when you get to know better, we'll launch the other one." But yeah, it's totally what you're saying is, depending on the use case. If you are doing subscription subtitle, for a movie. Yeah, you need something great because you have the consumer reading it and they need to understand, it need to look good. It doesn't actually have to be exactly what is said.
Because the sound,
it can paraphrase.
Sounds exactly.
It can paraphrase. On the other hand, if it's a bot which is consuming the text, then you don't care about the spelling. You want the meaning to be there. And actually, you can even go further. There are some algorithms where you can go from speech to intent, and you don't even get a transcript. You get directly the main intent. So you get to be faster.
Exactly, and that's sort of in a way what Rob was showing in his demo between the two ChatGPT models. And I have to thank you as well. In your presentation last year, you were saying, guys, the transformer model has changed the game, and after your presentation, then ChatGPT started to gain notoriety. So you heralded it to the TADSummit audience. So
yeah, it's true that we're based on the same technology. That ChatGPT make it from a consumer point of view, it make it suddenly how you say you can touch it. You understand it without having to be a tech person. But behind the scene, this same technology is super important for video, for voice, for everything in AI.
Excellent. So both of you will be at TADSummit. Both of you are presenting at TADSummit. So it's going to be a fun event, and I'm looking forward to introducing you both.
I just have one question, if you don't mind. So you're currently working in French and English, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So are you currently... Because I'm my late 50s, and I've been around quite a few years. So I like to think of people I know or people that I think can bring value to other people, not so much me. I more like to connect people. So as a gentleman, so are you currently looking for funding? Are you still set funding? Are you looking for strategic partners as far as a big org? Or are you looking for PE or late stage, early? Where are you guys at as far as your path?
So we are just launching right now, actually, this month, a seed round. We're looking for 1 million euro, and most of that is for growth. So the idea is now I have the tech, I have part of the people. Some of the people I have are doing freelance, and I need them to be full time, but I can't afford them for now. So I need those people. And then the other thing is I have client, but I have prospect that I can't take care of because I just don't have the bandwidth. So yeah, that's why we're raising right now, is to go faster to market, extend our reach.
There's somebody that I'm thinking about. He speaks French, he speaks English, he speaks German. He went to school at MIT. I've been partners with him and on one of his portfolio companies for years. His name is Roland Denner. He is from Scipio Partners. The guy is just off the charts smart. He would take a look at your business model. He understands it. He's just one of the brightest minds that I've met in 50 plus years of being around. And I've learned so much from him, being a partner of his for the last, 7 years. I'm only dealing with him the last 4 years on a daily basis. But man, he's a guy that if you can get into a room and he'll tell you things you don't want to hear. You know what I mean? You may want to choke him, but you'll leave meeting either with a partner or somebody that can put you in the right direction, or somebody that'll give you a different angle of looking at things. He's very strategic. I think he's an engineer. He's an engineer by background, so he has that sense of it. So as I think about okay, what do we do with somebody like you? Where do we put somebody like you? I'd love to get Scipio Partners. I don't know if you fit in their where they're at as far as what stages they like to invest in companies, but if not, he would know where to go. And he's just a brilliant guy.
Where is he based?
He's based in Munich, and he works for Scipio Partners. You can look him up. He's the managing partner. He's got. They just did an investment into Wire, which he led, which is a secure messaging company. I think he came in on the second round of that. They like to make more safer bets, or sometimes not so safe, depending on what that company is. But he's been pretty successful. They're a small fund, but just him as an individual, if you take apart the company and you look at somebody that will just dive into what you're doing, and just to be able to horizontally kind of know where everything and everybody else is doing. The guy's just a wealth of, he's kind of like a walking Alexa when it comes to different things. And the truth is, I make a joke. He's like, Ronaldo on a team in Afghanistan. Not that Scipio's bad, just that he's just such a brilliant guy.
No, that's
really smart, really smart guy. So I guess, Alan,
that's an action. That's an action from this.
Look,
okay?
it's just my advice. I mean, look, there's so many different VCs and there's so many different people. $1 million round is a low round. They do rounds between usually 1 and 5 million. So he fits it. And he's in Europe and he speaks French. His wife is French. So he's maybe give him a good reason to go back to French. So I'm just thinking and I really would love for you to test me one day, because if you guys can, transcribe me, you're really doing a good job. And I'll get a couple of my friends here from Queens, and if you can get 4 or 5 minutes in a room and transcribe it, man, you guys hit it out of the park. So that's a challenge.
Let's try that.
That's a challenge.
Excellent. Okay,
we'll do that in TAD.
Exactly. We will definitely do that. So again, Johnny, Karel, thank you so much for your time. This was really fun, and I'm looking forward to catching up together in October for TADSummit.